And if no one knew anything about you, Eddie, and your sort of journey, if you will, perhaps you could give us some idea of your background and kind of like your sort of your path to the first sort of iteration of your business.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I suppose those early days, taking it back to sort of school, in terms of what I was passionate about, what I enjoyed, obviously it was just PE. That was my thing. PE. Can't say it's necessarily academic. Was probably one of these children that fell into the box of could have done better. Didn't necessarily apply myself as much, but I think that's probably a little bit down to finding that thing that I was passionate about, and that clearly for me was, PE, being active, sport, played sport outside of school as well. And that meant my route following leaving school was to find something to do with sport. So went to college, did a sports course, and then slowly through the course got involved in a bit of coaching, working with kids. Thought, yeah, I like this. So then fell into some part-time employment. Back in those days, though, everything that we did in terms of work with schools and in the community would have been weekends, would have been evenings. Kind of the way the business looks now is very, very different, and the industry and the market's changed quite a lot over those years. But yeah, those early days were, evenings, weekends, teaching kids in school, out of school, and I just knew this was the vocation. This was what I wanted to do, and the whole business thing came a little bit later. So I think that was through interacting with some people, some of the people that my employer, I suppose I got a bit of inspiration from him. Also some things that I thought, I wouldn't do that. And I'd do that differently. So, but I think because I was exposed to business from the sense that my uncle ran his own business, and my dad did, although my dad's business was a little bit smaller, I kind of had those people around me. And even in those days where I was at college, those early sort of working days, working for somebody, in the back of my head, I knew I would run a business one day. And I just married the two together, and obviously wanted to take the plunge in terms of doing that. And then that passion for sport, getting kids active, and it's what I was involved in. And I just realized through obviously the person that I was in, my current employer, I just thought, I can do this better than you. And I just kind of went, yeah, let's do it. And we did that 2006, and then franchised the business in 2010. And I've been franchising ever since. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, as you say, that great Venn diagram of something you just care passionately about, and then you just sort of get the drive, and it all just folds into one. That sort of metamorphosis into franchising, how did that come about? Was that always in the back of your mind that this was a way you could scale the business, or was it through discussions or perhaps even appetite from some of the people that you were sort of serving and working with? How did that come about?
Yeah, no, there was no grand plan. I can't say there was we certainly do a lot more planning nowadays. But I think in those early days, I think that ignorance and that naivety is sometimes a good thing in business, isn't it? To be honest, when you don't question things too much. But 2009, we were doing well. So we're 3 years into running the business, double the turnover year on year. I thought, obviously, we're onto something here. Business is going well. So there was a crossroads really where I looked to organically continue to grow, and obviously we just grow into other areas, or we looked at the franchising route. And just through my own research, bit of Googling, looking at other people, industries, businesses that have been through the whole process of franchising their business. Had a conversation with a consultant, and decided, this was sort of, I felt this lent itself well to our business, getting some people, local people, to take our products, our services, with a know-how and support that we can obviously plug into that. Would allow them to obviously run a successful business in their area. So franchising then ticked those boxes, and off we went really. We started go through the whole process of getting the business ready to a point where we could then market it as a franchised proposition that people could buy into.
That makes sense. And in terms of marketing it, was that through word of mouth, organically, or like the directories? Was there a particular sort of channel that you found the most effective for sort of getting from that, from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, or was it a combination of all of those things?
It would be a combination of everything, to be honest. I mean, and we still do the things that we did back then now. So it's still a lot of those traditional sort of forms of marketing, whether that's, the directories that you've mentioned, attending exhibitions. Obviously Google's, we've got paid ads with Google, and also, advertising in magazines. Probably do less so of that now, but it is those kind of main routes to to sell the franchise and get, obviously, prospective inquiries into the business, and also a little bit we knew a few people as well as a few people in the industry, and we've had some employees as well that have then gone on to buy a franchise off us, so there has been a little bit of that as well. So.
And the scale, Progressive Sports looks, from your website, looks like a huge operation now. Can you sort of quantify? I was struggling to sort of pin down the sheer size of it, really, because it just looks so considerable. Can you quantify that? And how has that been? The larger it's got, it's testament to you and your team to grow it, to maintain it. How much of a challenge has it been, or maybe it hasn't been a challenge, to sort of maintain the quality? Because fundamentally, I guess for you, Eddie, that's the core of the sort of the service, is to provide great classes for kids and to to keep that. I'm sure from your mission statement, it's all about fitness and getting kids active, because that's a huge issue at the moment. So I guess how ginormous is Progressive Sports right now, and how have you sort of maintained that quality as it's grown?
I don't think I'd use the word. It's nice to know that on the from the outside looking in, it looks ginormous, but we've got about 25 franchise territories across the country.
Amazing.
Sort of the main sort of cities across the UK. We've got a presence in. So it's a decent little operation, and it's gone well. And James, I forgot the second part of your question was.
It's all right. More about, like, so as 25, that's certainly not to be sniffed at. And as that growth has happened, how or what processes or what challenges there have been of maintaining that quality?
Quality. Yeah, well, that's critical, really, isn't it? In terms of when you're trying to replicate something and someone's taking your baby, taking it into another area, then you want to maintain those brand standards and obviously those operating standards and everything that goes into somebody else operating your business, and you're supporting from a distance. So you've got to have the right sort of support, training. All those kind of things need to be in place, all those touch points, the right supply chain, plugging that all into the business. But we don't want anybody to dilute what we're doing. So we have to, regularly check in. We'll do that through, obviously, monitoring visits. We've obviously got regular communication back and forth. There's reports and things that we ask for the franchisees to supply back to us. And we have to maintain that, because what happens in London, Manchester, or wherever it might be can damage the reputation of the business, and we're very mindful of that. So, we have to, monitor that. But going back a step further, it probably starts at the selection point, doesn't it? You've got to get the right people in that kind of share that passion for us around physical activity and sport with children. So, because if they haven't got that, then we believe they might not be in it for the right reasons, and we want someone's why to drive them, and what's important to us is about inspiring and encouraging children to be physically active. So for us, that's really, really crucial and important in terms of qualifying those people. And then it goes with anything, isn't it? It's about those other things that you might look at, whether if you're recruiting an employee, there's certain things that we need from them and certain credentials that we'd be looking for. But selection's important, and then we need to maintain that right brand standards in place and right ways to sort of check in with them to make sure they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Yeah, maintaining that culture, and as you say, those values fundamentally.
Yeah.
In terms of sort of the challenges you've maybe come across over the years, has there been a couple that have really stood out that when you look back, you're like, well, that was tough? Maybe the pandemic, but maybe outside of that as well, things that you've thought that was tough, but we came through it and we overcame it? Or
Yeah,
go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say probably two things probably come to mind. Aside from obviously the pandemic, which was obviously difficult for everybody. I find probably the most stressful thing was financial pressure. I think all of us and probably everybody would resonate. When you run a business, when there's squeeze there, there's difficulties there, there's challenge there. That's certainly, mentally can be probably the most challenging thing to go through when you've got to meet payroll and all these other things. And, for us, there were probably a period in 2012, 2013, so probably early into our franchising journey, where I had to borrow money from my parents to get money, plug money into the business to kind of, support it really. And through that very difficult period. And probably one of the early points was, naivety. I think when you go into things probably in the early days, then you really do need some proper controls over your business, don't you? And proper, KPIs are things that you're measuring just to make sure the dial's going in the right direction. And probably we're still going through that transitional period of getting all that really properly nailed down. So that was difficult. I think also a challenge around probably getting your message out there really, which and getting that real traction and getting things moving. I think we're all naturally a little bit impatient. I know sometimes I can certainly be that way. And I think sometimes probably what would have told a younger me probably would have been to be more persistent, stick with things, be consistent, keep going. Because I think naturally I am, and other people sometimes want those quick wins, that silver bullet that changes things. But actually through experience, through living longer and all those kind of things, you realise that actually persistency, consistency, done on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, if you do that over time, you will get make that progress. But I think sometimes in those earlier days, you kind of that you just get a bit impatient sometimes. And I think that only comes through experience really of running a business. And if you've got the plan right and the planning's there, just execute the plan, be consistent, be persistent. And you've got to pivot, you've got to evolve and optimize what's working, what's not working. But probably two areas I think that sort of spring to mind.
I think that's a very common trait, as you say, when you're younger. The patience levels are lower. You're hungry, the hunger is there, but then experience tells you to just take the foot off the gas, maybe, and then you get that top. That only comes with experience. So you got that.
It does. You have to go through those times, really, and
If a friend of yours, Eddie, was coming to you and said, "Look, I'm going to start a franchise, not a competitor, I'm going to start a franchise," what would you? And I need just a little bit of salient advice here. What would you tell them? Would it be that? Or would it be something else?
And also deep pockets probably would be maybe another one. You've got to have that working capital behind you, and I think probably it can slow people down, or maybe they even never get it to the sort of level that they wanted to get it to because they just didn't have the working capital to inject into the business to actually maintain that. You can sink huge sums when it comes into advertising and marketing, to be honest, because you're competing with with some real big multinational brands, really, to be honest. And to take some of that advertising space, it does demand some quite high prices sometimes when you go into exhibitions or advertising in magazines. So you do really need that. You can't do it willy-nilly. You've got to go 2 feet all in, and you also need that a bit of funding behind you to make sure you've got the right chances of making a success of it, really. So I think do your research, of course, speak to people that are doing it, but make sure you've got the capital behind you to actually give it a good go, because otherwise I think you will be you will struggle, and you will feel like you're pushing water uphill at sometimes. So
wise words. Could you maybe tell us a bit about the sort of models that you've put in place for the franchises? It looks like from your website you have sort of maybe 3 different sort of routes if they're looking to go into progressive sports. So perhaps you could expand on those three, and also what made you sort of choose that way of operating the business, because I guess some franchises might just have one sort of, one size fits all, and others do it your way. So it'd be interesting to hear how you landed on that and how it's worked for you.
Yeah. So we did create a tiered system. So there's 3 tiers that people can come into, as you described. A couple of reasons why we did that. One, so we could just give people a smaller sort of territory, and they could then step up the territory sizes. And there's 2 distinct different people that tend to come in through looking to buy the franchise. They tend to be either in the industry, currently maybe working as a coach, teacher, educator. They work within the sector, and then looking at an opportunity to run their own business. And those people are owner operators, and they probably tend to come at a lower level of our tiered investments. And then as we go up those investments and up to our top package, we tend to get more sort of corporate people, maybe people that have middle management level, or even sort of director level of come out of the rat race and wanted to run their own business, and they want to manage it there. They don't necessarily want to get the tracksuit on, delivering our services into schools and communities. They want to manage it. So they want to obviously employ people to be able to and to operate that way. You just need a bigger territory so you can obviously get that traction and get enough income coming into the business to make it sustainable for you. So that's really why we looked at the tiering of it. And they're really the 2 sort of avatars of people that tend to come forward as potential franchisees.
Nice. And then in terms of, I guess you alluded to it a bit earlier actually, but I guess when these businesses form, you give them the resources and the tools and the sort of blueprints, if you will, because you understand how the model can grow and how it can work, and you effectively they get the support, I guess, from your team and you to help evolve that business.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the thing, probably one of the main drivers why people probably look at franchising, because obviously they can, access that support, that know-how, those tried and tested methods that have already been created by the franchisor and are proven to work. So I suppose that's why people look at franchising. That's why franchising is successful, in terms of the failure rates compared to obviously people starting their own business up or going through the franchise model. Obviously those failure rates are a lot lower when you look at franchising, and it's all that those support mechanisms that are put in place, not just from us as there's people at the head office, but also the network of franchisees that you get access to. So you get access to a group of other people, like-minded people, doing what you're doing on a daily basis, and you can bounce ideas off them. We've got WhatsApp groups and ways of that daily, weekly and monthly communication, and they can also obviously access our head office team. And we can support with all those different sort of key functions and those things that you need to be firing on to obviously make and create a successful business. So I think, having that support's important, because it is lonely running a business.
Yeah.
And at least if you come into a franchised business, there will be some immediate support that you can pull on. And I think for a lot of people that removes an element of risk away from starting your own business.
Yeah, you're almost coming into sort of a community feel in a way. As you say, it's that network of people is invaluable, and at all stages, right? The people who've been running that franchise for many years, and then they can lean on them for advice. And what about you, Eddie? Where do you turn for business support and resources? Some of the franchisors I've spoken to have talked about how it took them some time, but to that realization that you don't have to know it all as a business owner, right? You can initially, maybe they felt like they had to have many hats, but actually the reality was that they could really lean on the expertise and bring it in. And is that something that you can relate to?
Yeah, we've certainly done that. I mean, in terms of nobody knows everything, do they? To be honest, and I think it would be a bit arrogant for me to sit here and say that. And I think we've all got to be open-minded towards learning. So I take my personal development seriously, whether that's reading, podcasts, attending networking events. I'm part of a few membership groups as well with business owners. So yeah, I'm a keen learner, and I want to keep evolving and learning and developing the business and improving. because I think it's crucial, really. I think it goes hand in hand with being able to drive a business forward. I think if you want to grow the business, you have to grow the business owner, and that has to take, that person's got to take that responsibility on being able to do that, and to think that everything is probably edging on a bit of delusion, to be honest. But yeah, and you got to bring good people in as well, haven't you? And if you get the opportunity to bring good people into the business to take certain roles off you, whether it's marketing, sales, whatever it might be, you got to bring them key people into the business as well, haven't you, to free you up to do what you can do well. So yeah.
And then in terms of growth, what do you sort of, now that we've hopefully moved on from what was I imagine a very challenging period for particularly anyone running sort of classes and courses for children, the next couple of years for you and Progressive Sports, Eddie, do you have a sort of vision of what that might be and how that growth plan might be working out, or particular things that you're shooting for, or are you just kind of aiming for a little bit of stability now, or is it really just onwards and upwards?
Yeah, no, we are definitely foot's on the gas. We want to go forward, and probably our recruitment of new franchisees will probably be. It's always been quite steady. We've never been anybody that's gone and recruited 20 or 30 in a year. So it's been more like probably 3 to 5 a year, and if we can carry on with that sort of trajectory, and also we're looking at sort of the M&A space, really, and looking at acquisitions, and that's something that we're actually proactively starting to look at, keeping it in the space that we believe we're good at, we're experts in, but looking at competitors where we haven't got a franchise presence, and looking at that. And we've got one of our longest standing franchisee that's now retiring as well. So we're actually going through the acquisition of the business back into the central fold, and that again might be something going forward. As people's journey comes to an end, we will bring some of those back in centrally, and manage it that way. But our market's quite buoyant. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of good things that are going on, and commercially it's viable. There's funding opportunities and grants available to obviously impact on primary physical education, but also outside of that, there's grants to support children to be active in their local community, and we're experts and know where to look and support people to be able to build a business in this sector and do it well.
Brilliant. That was actually my last question for you, Eddie. So just want to say thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us. I hope you enjoyed it. It's good to sort of dig into Progressive Sports and learn a lot more about it, and learn a bit more about you and your sort of learnings from it. So
yeah, that's great, James.